Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, wondering what went wrong with your child? You gave them everything, your time, your heart, your energy. You were always there, showing up, reaching out, doing your best to support them, even when it cost you peace of mind. And yet, somehow it still feels like it was never enough. Maybe they rarely call. Maybe they pull away when you try to connect. Maybe you feel like you have to walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. And deep down, you start to wonder, is it me? Did I do something wrong? Why do I feel like I'm the one chasing their approval when I'm the parent? If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. So many parents, especially those in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, carry this quiet ache. It doesn't get talked about much, but it's real. And today, I want to speak directly to that ache. Not with blame or shame, but with clarity and strength. Because the truth is, there comes a time in life, especially as we grow older, when chasing our child's approval can begin to wear us down. And if we're not careful, we can lose sight of our own worth in the process. But here's the good news. You can stop chasing and start choosing. You can take back your power, your peace, and your dignity without shutting your child out or becoming cold. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop chasing your child's approval and begin to reclaim your own. And let's start with something subtle but powerful. How caring too much, without limits, can actually backfire. See, most of us were taught that caring deeply was the ultimate sign of love. That the more we gave, the better things would be. And when it came to our children, we gave everything. We gave rides, packed lunches, paid bills, forgave mistakes, sat up late during heartbreaks, and stood in the background cheering them on for years, even decades. But over time, something strange can happen. The more we give without boundaries, the more some children begin to expect it. They get used to your presence, your sacrifices, your endless emotional labor. And slowly, they begin to believe they don't need to give much back. Not out of cruelty, but out of comfort, out of ego. Their ego starts to swell. They may not say it out loud, but inside they begin to believe that your world still revolves around them. That you'll always be there no matter how they treat you. That your attention, your forgiveness, your time, they're not gifts. They're guaranteed. And the more you try to fix the relationship by giving more, the less they appreciate it. It's like pouring water into a pot with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you give, it never feels like enough. You start to feel drained, exhausted, resentful. You may even start to doubt your worth as a parent. But let me tell you something that might just change the way you see it. The problem isn't that you cared, it's that you were never meant to carry the entire relationship alone. When you care too much without balance, you unknowingly teach your child that they don't have to meet you halfway. And when that happens, their ego grows. They start to think, why should I change when mom or dad will always be the one to bend, to reach out, to forgive first? It's painful to admit, but sometimes our love, when poured out without limits, becomes the very thing that makes them stop seeing us clearly. They stop seeing your heart, your humanity, your effort. But here's where things begin to shift, in your favor. The moment you begin to reclaim your independence, everything changes. And no, I'm not talking about slamming doors, blocking numbers, or cutting them off. That's not strength, that's reaction. I'm talking about the quiet, steady, respectful decision to stop begging for closeness and start choosing peace. It might sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful things you'll ever do. Because when you become emotionally independent, when you stop chasing, over-explaining, over-apologizing, your child notices. Even if they don't say it out loud, even if they pretend not to care. Trust me, they feel it. At first, it may confuse them. They're used to a certain pattern. You call first, you text first, you apologize first, you keep the conversation going. You've been the emotional anchor of the relationship. So when that pattern breaks, when you stop trying so hard, they'll notice the shift, whether they admit it or not. They may start to wonder what changed. They may feel unsettled, even irritated, because suddenly you're not playing the same role anymore. But here's the thing. They're not confused because you're doing something wrong. They're confused because for the first time, they're being invited, challenged even, to see you not just as mom or dad, but as a whole person. Someone with boundaries, someone with self-respect, someone who loves them, yes, but who no longer needs to prove that love by shrinking themselves. And strangely enough, that independence, it draws respect, sometimes slowly, sometimes silently. But it's real. Because here's what many adult children don't realize until it's too late. The parent who once bent over backwards, who once tried to please, who once gave without asking anything in return, that parent has a choice. And when you start making that choice for yourself, it forces them to think. It doesn't mean they'll change overnight. It doesn't mean they'll thank you or apologize or suddenly become the son or daughter you hoped they'd be. But that's not the point. The point is that you change. You begin to wake up with more peace. You start to walk through your day without the weight of their silence sitting on your shoulders. You stop analyzing their every word, their tone, their texts. You stop living in emotional reaction to them and start living in alignment with your own truth. And the best part? You start to feel lighter, stronger, clearer. Because you're no longer caught in the cycle of doing more to earn love that should have been freely given. Instead, you're stepping into your own emotional authority. You're choosing to live from a place of dignity, not desperation. And as that shift takes place, something incredible happens. You stop chasing, and they start noticing. They may not say it, but they feel the difference. They feel the loss of energy that used to be theirs. They feel the silence, not as absence, but as a message. And make no mistake, silence is a message. You see, silence isn't about punishment. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate your child into feeling guilty. It's about stepping back with grace. It's about giving space, not just for them, but for yourself. Space to breathe, space to heal, space to remember who you are when you're not constantly bending to meet someone else's needs. And here's the interesting part. When you stop playing their game, you start to win. You may not have realized it, but for a long time, you've been part of a dynamic that feels like a game. One where you're constantly trying to say the right thing, do the right thing, hold the right tone, avoid the wrong timing. It's a game of trying to stay close to someone who doesn't meet you halfway. And the rules? Well, they always seem to shift depending on their mood or their approval. One day, they're warm. The next, distant. Sometimes they answer your calls with joy. Other times they ignore your messages for weeks. It's unpredictable. It leaves you guessing. And slowly, you've learned to overthink everything. You shrink yourself just a little. You give just a little more. You stay quiet when your heart wants to speak. But let me ask you this. What kind of relationship needs you to play games to feel loved? Because real love, respectful, honest, grown-up love, doesn't require you to tiptoe around someone else's ego. It doesn't ask you to prove your worth over and over again. It doesn't thrive on your silence and self-sacrifice. So, when you stop playing, when you stop reacting to every cold shoulder or silent treatment, you take back your power. Suddenly, they can't control the emotional weather in your life anymore. They can pull back, but you don't chase. They can send mixed signals, but you don't decode. They can withdraw, but you remain steady. And that, right there, is where everything starts to shift. Because when you remove yourself from the game, the only thing they're left with is their own reflection. And let me tell you, that's not always a comfortable sight. It's easy to act aloof when someone is always trying to win your love. It's easy to stay on a pedestal when someone keeps putting you there. But when the pedestal disappears, when the applause fades, when the texts stop and the silence sets in, that's when the mask begins to crack. The mask that says, I don't need them. The mask that says, I'm fine without them. The mask that says, they were always too much. But your absence reveals the truth they've been trying to avoid. The truth that maybe, just maybe, your presence meant more than they admitted. Your love held more value than they gave credit for. And your quiet withdrawal? That doesn't say you've given up, it says you've grown up. Because your silence, handled with dignity, speaks louder than any words could. It's a strange thing, how people begin to pay more attention when you stop begging for it. Your child may not say it, but they notice when you stop reaching out. They notice when the weekly calls go unanswered because you stopped calling. They notice when you stop sending those just checking in messages or asking about their day. And slowly, their mind starts to race. Why did Mom stop calling every Sunday? Why hasn't Dad texted me in a while? Why do I feel this strange emptiness where their attention used to be? They may not say it to you, they may not even say it to themselves. But deep down, the silence you've created is stirring something they weren't ready for. Accountability. They have to sit in their own discomfort now. Not because you want them to suffer, but because you're finally giving them space to feel the absence of what they took for granted. And while all this is happening on their end, something beautiful is happening on yours. You begin to feel more like yourself again. Not the version of you that's always waiting for a reply or replaying conversations, wondering if you said too much or too little. You start to rediscover the version of yourself that has boundaries, that values your own time, that understands you were always worthy, even when they couldn't see it. That's the power of detachment. Not the kind that's cold or distant, but the kind that is calm and centered. It's knowing that your value doesn't rise or fall based on how your child treats you. Let that sink in for a moment. Your value does not depend on how often they call. Your value does not depend on how close they keep you. Your value does not depend on whether they approve of your life, your views, your choices. You are not here to win your child's approval. You are here to live your truth with peace, wisdom, and joy. And if that means stepping back, letting go, and creating space so you can breathe again, then that is not a loss. That is a gain. You haven't given up on them. You've just stopped giving away parts of yourself that were never meant to be sacrificed in the first place. And here's the thing. Your child might act unaffected. They might double down on the silence. They might pretend like nothing has changed. But don't be fooled. People notice absence more than presence, especially when the presence was consistent, loving, and quietly dependable for years. Your child knows you love them. That's never been the problem. The problem is that they may have mistaken your constant care for something they didn't need to return. And now, your absence is their mirror. A mirror that shows them the truth. They weren't giving enough. They weren't appreciating you. And most importantly, they weren't seeing you clearly. You've been more than just a parent. You've been a guide, a support system, a constant. But you're also a human being with limits. And when you start honoring those limits, that's not weakness. That's strength. So keep going. Keep choosing peace over approval. Keep choosing boundaries over chasing. Keep walking forward, not away from love, but towards self-respect. Because the greatest gift you can give your child at this stage in life isn't your availability. It's your example. When you live with quiet confidence, when you hold your boundaries with grace, when you stop playing games and start valuing your own emotional well-being, you show them what it means to be emotionally mature. And even if they don't say it now, one day they will remember it. One day, they'll see the strength it took to stop chasing and start choosing yourself. And that day, that's when everything changes. As you continue walking this new path, one where you honor your own peace and stop chasing after love that should come freely, something begins to unfold that you might not expect. The silence you've allowed, the distance you've created, the boundaries you've held with steadiness, all of it starts revealing truths that were always there but hard to see. Your child, for all their confidence, for all their grown-up independence, carries a mask too. A mask that says they don't need anyone. A mask that says they're too busy, too stressed, too overwhelmed to stay connected. a mask that suggests your feelings should take a back seat while they sort out their own life. But when you stop pleading for closeness, that mask begins to crack. Not because you're forcing anything, but because your absence shines a brighter light on the parts of themselves they usually avoid. It's hard for anyone to confront the truth that they might have taken someone for granted. It's even harder when that someone is a parent who loved them without hesitation. And it's in those quiet cracks that the truth starts to seep through. Your child begins to see the things they ignored before. The effort you put in, the care you showed, the energy you poured into a relationship they didn't always nurture in return. Without your constant presence smoothing everything over, they have to look at what's really there. And what's missing, even if they don't say a word, even if their pride keeps them silent, they feel it. The shift, the loss, the weight of a connection they didn't understand was fragile. Because relationships, even between parent and child, need tending. They need reciprocity. They need respect. And now, for the first time in a long time, your child gets to see what happens when they don't show up. But while they're facing their truth, you're discovering yours. You're realizing that what felt like rejection wasn't a statement about your worth. It was a redirection toward your own strength, toward your own clarity, toward a life where your happiness doesn't hinge on whether someone calls, or texts, or visits as often as you hoped. Rejection hurts, yes, especially when it comes from your own child. But there's something powerful about stepping back and asking, what am I meant to learn here? What am I being guided toward? Because life has a funny way of using painful moments to point us toward a deeper purpose. Maybe you're meant to rediscover parts of yourself you set aside while raising a family. Maybe you're meant to build relationships with friends, neighbors, or community members who truly value your presence. Maybe you're meant to explore passions that bring you joy instead of waiting for someone else to fill your emotional cup. And maybe, just maybe, you're meant to finally stand tall in your own light without apologizing for taking up space. You'd be surprised how many parents begin to flourish once they stop centering their lives around chasing approval from their children. They start reading more, walking more, laughing more. They begin connecting with others in ways they hadn't before. They start finding peace in their routine instead of anxiety. And the funny thing, the more they grow, the more their children start to notice. Because growth is loud, even when you don't say a word. It shows in your posture. It shows in your smile. It shows in the steadiness of your voice. It shows in the peace you carry into every room. And while your child may not comment right away, they feel the difference. They feel your strength. They feel your independence. They feel your calm. That's when everything begins to come full circle. You stop trying to prove yourself, and suddenly you become a quiet force in their life. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that earns respect. You become someone they can look up to again, not because you're trying to be perfect, but because you're choosing to be whole. And that shift doesn't just help you, it helps them too. You see, children, no matter how old they get, learn from who you are far more than from what you say. When you stop chasing their approval, you teach them a lesson they may not understand today, but they will someday. That love is strongest when it flows freely, not when it's begged for. That boundaries don't break relationships, they protect them. And that your worth and theirs does not depend on constant validation. One day, your child may come back with softer eyes and a more open heart. One day, they may say the words you've longed to hear. One day, they may understand the courage it took to reclaim your self-respect. But even if that day hasn't come yet, even if it arrives slowly or imperfectly, your growth is not wasted. Because the change happening inside you matters. It matters for your happiness. It matters for your peace. It matters for the years ahead, years that you deserve to live with joy, not emotional exhaustion. So take pride in the steps you've taken. Take pride in the boundaries you've held. Take pride in the way you've chosen yourself without closing your heart. That balance, love with limits, care with self-respect, is one of the greatest gifts you can give your child, even if they don't recognize it yet. And as you move forward, remember that your life is still unfolding. You are still growing. You are still allowed to dream, explore, and discover new chapters. You're not meant to spend your later years in emotional knots, wishing someone would finally see your value. You're meant to stand in your value every single day. So if this message speaks to you, I want you to take a moment and breathe in the truth of it. You are enough. You always have been. Your worth was never dependent on how your child treated you. Their approval was never the measure of your beauty, your goodness, or your strength. You are a whole person, with wisdom, with depth, with a heart that has carried more than most people will ever know. And if you've decided now, whether quietly or firmly, that you're done chasing, let that decision bring you peace. Let it guide you into a life where your happiness leads the way. Let it remind you of the confidence you've earned through every storm you've survived. Now, if you feel moved to share your thoughts or your experience, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. So many people your age are going through the same thing, and your story might be the one that brings someone else hope. And if this message touched you today, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more conversations that lift you up and remind you of your strength. You deserve to feel supported, understood, and empowered at every stage of life. Here's to living with confidence, clarity, and peace, no matter your age, no matter your past, and no matter how others choose to show up. Here's to living your best life, on your own terms.